Good evening. Welcome to the April 7th edition of the Downers Grove Village Council meeting. Things no doubt look a little different and will sound a little different as well. In order to do our part to help facilitate the governor's stay-at-home order and to be mindful of social distancing, we have most of the team operating remotely by conference call. Participating by conference call is Greg Jose, Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners Marge, Earl, Nicole, Walus, Leslie Sadowski-Fugitt, Rich Kulovany, and Cavanaugh Gray, as well as Megan Miles, our village clerk. Participating in council chambers with me is David Fieldman, our village manager, Michael Baker, our deputy village manager, and Enza Petrarca, our village attorney. Sorry, Enza. Bear with us this evening. Perfect timing for that. While we work first our such meeting, this is going to be interesting, and we're not exactly sure how it's going to go. But in an effort to provide public input to this meeting, we solicited input prior to the meeting via email and through our village e-remarks system. We'll do our best to answer those questions and get those comments into the record. We'll also make every effort to enter questions or comments received during the meeting into the record at the end of the meeting, where we have placed our typical public comments section. As is sometimes the case during regular meetings, we may have to get back to folks with additional information at a later date. Tonight's meeting, while different and a little awkward, is no less important. In fact, it's vitally important. It's important to the continued operation of our village during these troubled times. And while some of tonight's meeting may seem a little dry, I'd ask each of you watching at home to listen and to stick it out through the end. It's your village, and your elected council wants you to know what's going on and wants you to be part of our work. As is typically the case, the agenda for tonight's meeting is available online, www.downers.us. In the lower left-hand corner, you'll see a link to this week's meetings where you can find the agenda. And as always, we'll begin our meeting this evening with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Megan, would you please call the roll? Nope, wait. Yeah, please do that. Megan, can you hear me?
Yes. Commissioner Jose?
Here.
Commissioner Earl?
Here.
Commissioner Walus?
Here.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugitt?
Here.
Commissioner Kulovany?
Here.
Commissioner Gray?
Here.
Mayor Barnett?
Here. Thank you. Is there a motion concerning electronic village council meetings?
Mayor Barnett, I move that the council conduct the April 7th, 2020 village council meeting electronically.
Second.
Motion to conduct this meeting electronically is made by Commissioner Jose and seconded by Commissioner Earl. For tonight's meeting, we're going to go around and ask questions. Are there any questions or comments from Commissioner Jose?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner Earl?
No, Mayor, thank you.
Commissioner Gray?
No, Mayor Barnett.
Commissioner Kulovany?
No, Mayor.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugitt?
No, Mayor.
Commissioner Walus?
No questions, Mayor, thank you.
Megan, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl? Aye. Commissioner Gray?
Aye.
Commissioner Kulovany?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugitt? Aye. Commissioner Walus? Aye. Mayor Barnett?
Aye. That motion passes unanimously. Welcome, everybody. Item 3 on tonight's agenda are minutes of previous council meetings. Is there a motion concerning previous council minutes?
Mayor Barnett, I move that the council adopt the minutes of the March 10th, 2020 meeting as presented.
Second.
Motion to approve previous council minutes is made by Commissioner Jose and seconded by Commissioner Earl. Are any comments or questions? Commissioner Jose?
None, Mayor, thank you.
Commissioner Earl?
No, Mayor, thank you.
Commissioner Gray?
No, Mayor, thanks.
Commissioner Kulovany?
No, Mayor, thank you.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugitt?
No, Mayor, thank you.
Commissioner Walus.
No, Mayor, thank you.
Megan, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl? Aye. Commissioner Gray?
Aye.
Commissioner Kulovany?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugitt? Aye. Commissioner Walus? Aye. Mayor Barnett?
Aye, that too passed unanimously. Takes us to item 4, our consent agenda for the evening. Is there a motion concerning tonight's consent agenda?
Mayor Barnett, I move that the council adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion to approve tonight's consent agenda is made by Commissioner Jose and seconded by Commissioner Earl. For comments and questions, do you have any questions, Commissioner Jose?
No, Mayor, thank you.
Commissioner Earl?
No, but I do have a comment. I wanted to let everybody know that everything on this consent agenda is stuff that we really need to have right now. We're only spending money on stuff we have to have. So that's my only comment, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Marge. Commissioner Gray?
No, Mayor, thank you.
Commissioner Kulovany?
No, Mayor, thank you.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugitt?
No, Mayor. Thank you.
Commissioner Walus?
No, Mayor. Thank you.
Megan, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl? Aye. Commissioner Gray?
Aye.
Commissioner Kulovany?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugitt? Aye. Commissioner Walus? Aye. Mayor Barnett?
Aye, that too passes unanimously. Takes us to item 5 on our agenda tonight. This is our active agenda. The only active agenda for this evening is item Resolution 2020-8538, which is a resolution extending the state of emergency. The foresight of those who guided our village before established Section 9 of our municipal code, creating an Office of Emergency Management. I can tell you from my conference calls at DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference and the Illinois Municipal League over the last several weeks, in this regard, Downers Grove was well prepared. The village's Office of Emergency Management functions pursuant to state code and exists to, I quote, prevent, minimize, repair, and alleviate injury or damage resulting from disaster caused by enemy attack, sabotage, or other hostile action, or natural causes or man-made disasters. It is a tool no mayor ever hopes to use, yet here we are. On March 14, 2020, pursuant to Section 916 of the Downers Grove Municipal Code, your mayor, upon recommendation of the Village of Downers Grove Office of Emergency Management, proclaimed a state of emergency exists in the Village of Downers Grove. The state of emergency was mainly in response to the Governor of Illinois declaring all counties in the state of Illinois as a disaster area on March 9, 2020, due to the outbreak of COVID-19. As you likely recall, on March 20, 2020, Governor Pritzker issued a stay-at-home order directing all individuals living within the state of Illinois to stay at home or at their place of residence, except as allowed by the order, and ordering all non-essential businesses and operations to cease in accordance with the order through April 7, 2020. That order was extended and now goes through April 30th. With the fast-changing, widespread effect of various orders from the governor, as well as other national initiatives, and with the overall fluid state of commerce affecting residents, businesses, village vendors, and suppliers, along with the need for coordination with other government agencies, such as our schools, parks, county, and state, it remains that the state of emergency is not only still in fact our status, but it remains an appropriate tool for our village during this time. During this state of emergency, I have issued the following executive orders. Regarding liquor laws, allowing R1 and R2 liquor licensees the option to sell prepackaged beer and wine for off-premise consumption. Regarding utility billing, staying the collection of late payments and penalties. Regarding parking citations and food and beverage tax, staying the collection of late payments and penalties. Regarding commuter parking permits, authorizing an extension of second quarter commuter parking permits through September 30th, 2020. Consistent with Section 9-19, the Village Council may extend such a state of emergency and any orders issued by the mayor in connection therewith until such a time fixed by resolution. To that end, this resolution has been prepared to extend the state of emergency in accordance with and for the remainder of the duration of the gubernatorial disaster proclamation, which is currently set to expire on April 30th, 2020. The resolution before us this evening further affirms, authorizes, and extends the executive orders issued, those previously mentioned, during this state of emergency. Is there a motion concerning the extending the state of emergency?
Mayor Barnett, I move that the council adopt a resolution extending the state of emergency for the Village of Downers Grove as presented.
Second.
The motion to extend the state of emergency is made by Commissioner Jose and seconded by Commissioner Earl. Are there any questions or comments from the council? Commissioner Jose.
I would only say, Mayor, that I'm in full agreement with the declaration of emergency and all of your executive orders, and I hope that we can see them come to an end soon, but obviously they are necessary for the time being. So, I will be voting in favor. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Greg. Commissioner Earl.
I will be voting in favor of this. I am sorry to see it come to this, but this is where we're at. It's difficult for all of us. And thank you for stepping up, Mayor Barnett. I appreciate you putting yourself out there and leading us in this difficult time.
Thank you. Commissioner Gray.
I am in favor of the extension of the emergency, and just want to say again, echo the sentiments of Greg and Marge. The leadership by staff at the village and by yourself, Mayor, is appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kulovany.
Yes, I also agree with this extension. I think these are reasonable and responsible, and I also agree with my previous colleague's statements.
Thank you, Rich. Commissioner Sadowski-Fugitt.
Yep, also in favor. And again, I want to thank you for your leadership and your thoughtfulness with the executive orders. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Walus. Commissioner Walus.
Yes, I am also in agreement with extending the state of emergency, and would like to thank staff and Mayor Barnett for the leadership shown during this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. We did have one question on this agenda item, which I'll read here. In the whereas sections of the resolutions, the number of cases by WHO is mentioned. Does the council know how many COVID-19 cases there are in Downers Grove? Regarding the number of COVID-19 cases in the village, we direct folks to the DuPage County Health Department dashboard website. It shows the number of cases in the county by municipality and is updated pretty regularly. So folks that are looking for those numbers periodically would do best to check the county health department website. With that, Megan, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Gray?
Aye.
Commissioner Kulovany?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugitt?
Aye.
Commissioner Walus?
Aye.
Mayor Barnett?
Aye. That motion passes unanimously. Item 6 on our agenda tonight would be first reading. We do not have any first reading materials, so with that we'll move on to item 7, which is the manager's report.
I have a report outlining the village's financial response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The presentation will take several minutes and will cover the 7 topics shown here on the screen. I will start with an overview of the issue as it relates to the village's budget and financial condition. Simply put, the COVID-19 pandemic is significantly negatively impacting the national, regional, and local economy. Accordingly, many village revenue sources will be negatively affected. At the same time, expenses related to responding to the pandemic are projected to increase. We have identified several goals and objectives to be achieved in our financial response plan. Our goal is to be a sustainable and resilient village government. Our objectives are to continue to provide essential services during the crisis throughout 2020 and into the future. We also need to be financially prepared to respond to a future emergency or disaster. These goals and objectives are consistent with our strategic goal of being a steward of financial sustainability. Additional objectives in the plan include using a multiple fund response. The general fund may not be in a position to respond effectively without the resources of other funds. Maintaining robust balances in the health and risk fund in anticipation of an increase in claims and therefore costs. Aligning the village's response with the timing and magnitude of the issue, as well as the approaches being used by the state and federal governments. And finally, maintaining at least half of the reserves in the general fund so that we could respond to future emergencies or disasters. The COVID-19 pandemic and its economic impacts present many challenges to be addressed. There is a great deal of uncertainty about the duration and the impact of the pandemic on the local economy. No one can predict for sure how long and to what extent the economy will be affected. Based on the information available now, the magnitude of the potential decline in village revenues could be overwhelming. Another challenge is the lag time in the reporting of many of the village's major revenue sources. For example, there is a 90-day lag in the reporting and remittance of sales tax revenues. There's also uncertainty about financial assistance available to municipalities from the federal and state governments. It's important to note that financial assistance is not guaranteed for municipalities with populations less than 500,000. A key step in responding to the issue is quantifying the financial impact. Here's some background information about the general fund, the village's primary operating fund, which is used to pay for most village services. The general fund is supported by a wide mix of revenue sources, shown here in the green portion of the bar chart. Total revenue for 2020 is budgeted to be just shy of $50 million. Over half of these revenues are greatly influenced by economic activity. Over $27 million of the budgeted revenue comes from sales tax, food and beverage taxes, income taxes, and building permit fees. The current economic downturn is expected to substantially reduce these revenues. Looking at the general fund expenses by operating department, shown in the red bar on the chart, about 82% of total expenses are used to operate the police, fire, and public works departments. These departments provide most of the services considered to be essential, including public safety, emergency storm response, and snow and ice control. The general fund maintains the recommended level of reserves, equal to 40% of annual expenses. We currently have about $20 million in reserve. A significant decline in the economically sensitive revenues while maintaining essential services could put a large strain on the general fund, even as reserves are used to cover this revenue decline. Staff used a range of revenue projections in the preparation of this response plan. The most conservative revenue projections are shown in this slide and show most revenue sources declining by 50% or more, and property taxes declining by 25%. The most conservative revenue declines can be described as catastrophic or unprecedented. We hope that these projections are too conservative. We pray that the village won't experience this level of crisis. We hope that the projections shown in this slide are wrong. However, if the current economic conditions persist, these revenue declines are possible. Therefore, it is imperative that the village exercise exceptional financial stewardship by preparing for an extended economic downturn. Applying the most conservative revenue projections, total general fund revenues would decline by about 42% in 2020. This would result in a $20.7 million financial gap. The financial plan also includes less conservative revenue projections that would result in a smaller financial gap to be overcome. This slide also shows a 17% decline in total revenues, resulting in an $8.3 million gap. When we discuss strategies and actions later in the presentation, we will show how these gaps could be addressed and will display this slide again. The village has many other funds beyond the general fund, and staff is projecting similar revenue declines in most other funds as well. The 4 funds directly related to and supported by the general fund are likely to be negatively impacted. The funds used for the construction of capital projects, which rely on revenues such as home rule sales tax, utility taxes, stormwater, water, and parking fees, will also be negatively impacted. Additional information about these funds can be found in the revised fund budgets included in the agenda materials for this report. This section of the presentation outlines the actions the village plans on taking to address the financial gap created by the projected revenue decline. The plan calls for a multi-tiered approach. This approach allows the village to scale our financial response as the situation unfolds. We will progress through the tiers as the crisis persists and the conditions dictate. Here is the planned 4-tier response to the projected financial gap in the general fund. Nearly $21 million is available in this tiered response plan. While the tiers appear in order of the planned use, financial conditions may prompt the village to use a mix of all the tiers to respond to the crisis. As a first step, the village will seek reimbursement and financial assistance from the federal and state governments using all legislation and programs available to us. It is important to note that the funding for local governments in the federal stimulus package does not provide for guaranteed direct funding to municipalities with populations less than 500,000. This means that the village of Downers Grove is not guaranteed to receive financial support. We will vigorously pursue such funding. However, at this point, our response plan does not count on receiving funds in this category. Tier 2 includes over $1.8 million in expense reductions by implementing items like a hiring freeze, eliminating all but the most essential purchases of supplies, equipment, and vehicles, and eliminating staff travel and training and educational reimbursements. Tier 3 includes deferring the construction of capital projects in the capital fund, in the municipal buildings funds, and transferring these funds on hand intended to pay for these projects into the general fund to help cover operational expenses. About $6.5 million could be transferred into the general fund with this approach. Capital projects in these 2 funds were suspended a few weeks ago and will continue to be suspended until revenues return to originally budgeted performance levels. The village is actively implementing the first 3 tiers right now. Tier 4 includes using money from the Asset Forfeiture Fund and up to half of the general fund reserves. About $12.4 million is available in this tier. The village is positioned to implement Tier 4 actions immediately, should circumstances dictate. Again, while the tiers appear in order of planned use, financial conditions may prompt the village to use a mix of all tiers to respond to the crisis. Here's the graph of potential revenue decline and the resulting financial gap shown earlier in this presentation. We will demonstrate how the actions in the tiered approach can be used to address the gaps. The actions included in tiers 2 and 3 can be used to address a 17% decline in revenues, a gap of $8.3 million. Applying all of the 4 tiers would allow the village to address a 42% decline, a gap of $20.7 million. Monitoring the performance of all village revenues is key to the successful implementation of this plan. During the next 3 weeks, we will receive information about 5 key revenue sources budgeted to generate $1.68 million. By April 30th, we should have a better understanding of the likely impact to the village budget. However, additional key information will not be available until summer. Deciding when to implement the actions in the tiers and to what extent will be challenging given the significant delay in receiving information about revenue performance. The availability of federal and state funds will not likely be known until May 1st. Property tax revenue will not be available until June. April sales tax revenue will not be available until middle of July. Decisions about all potential action steps will take place throughout the balance of the year. Every attempt will be made to align the responsive action steps with the duration and magnitude of this crisis. On or around the first day of each month for the next 3 months, decisions about the implementation of this response plan will be made. Each month we'll have a little bit more information about our overall financial condition. The revenue decline included in this financial plan is conservative, and the tiered approach allows the village to align the response with the magnitude of the issue. However, it is conceivable that the financial conditions may prompt the village to take actions beyond those included in the 4 tiers. If this turns out to be the case, the village could consider using reserves in the enterprise funds, these are the water and parking funds. Capital projects in these funds have been suspended as well to preserve available cash in these funds. Considering the early retirement of the Ogden Avenue Tax Increment Financing District and using the disbursement of funds for general operations. And finally, considering steps which would reduce personnel expenses. It is important to understand the village's projected financial condition if all of the 4 tiers of the response plan are implemented. The ending balance in many funds will be affected with this response plan. This table shows the results of using all 4 tiers. In this scenario, the balances in these 4 funds would decline by $16 million in total due to the use of reserves and the projected revenue decline in each fund. Capital projects will be limited to only a few essential projects. The projects which started prior to the emergency declaration and the projects funded by grants and bond proceeds. Here are the next steps as we implement this plan. First, we will continue to monitor all village revenues. We will continue to seek assistance from the state and federal governments if funding is made available. We will continue to reduce general fund expenses with a commitment to cost control. We will continue with the suspension of capital projects in all funds, and we will prepare for the use of the Tier 4 action items. We will also continuously report information out to the Village Council and to the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Special thank you, too, to the finance team who's spent a lot of time trying to help us develop a plan. The work is really appreciated. I realize that was a lot more than anybody might plan to do in a similar window, so thank you all. We did have one question related to this which came in. I'll read that into the record. The approved FY20 budget provides revenue and expense information for all funds pertaining to the general operation and maintenance of municipal government, including the Downers Grove Library. Given the library is closed, can the associated library expenditure be reduced and thereby help the village's finances? While the library budget is included in the village budget, the library is a component unit government. Essentially, this means the library is an autonomous government with its own governing board. Any expense reductions related to library operations will affect the library fund budget only and will not affect village funds. We have forwarded that same question and email to the library executive director, Julie Milovic. So thank you all. This takes us to the next portion of our meeting, which is council member reports. We'll start with Commissioner Jose. Greg, you have anything?
Thank you very much, Mayor. Obviously, the COVID-19 pandemic has changed our village and our lives in so many ways. Many of them are temporary, but time will tell whether some of these changes are perhaps more permanent. But times like these put a spotlight on what it is to be a community, to truly follow Scripture's command to love our neighbors. Social distancing and staying at home can be a frustrating inconvenience, but it's how we can show love to the elderly couple next door or the child neighbor with asthma or an autoimmune disease, the first responders and healthcare workers who are sacrificing their safety and health for those in need, or the supermarket and pharmacy employees who are truly redefining for many what it is to be an essential worker by risking their health and safety so that all of us can continue to function in our own homes. Each time we fail to follow the stay-at-home order and gather unnecessarily, we fail all of those who risk their own health and safety for us. Now, perhaps more than ever, Downers Grove needs to truly be a community in which we love our neighbors. Rather than approach this pandemic as imposing an inconvenience on us, we should approach it as an opportunity to step back from an era of constant motion and overscheduling and focus instead on those we love, an opportunity to put aside the easy, isolating distractions of technology and embrace its ability to keep us connected to distant family and friends, an opportunity to say thank you to those who are working so hard to keep all of us safe and healthy. And let us also take the opportunity to comfort those who are grieving a lost or sick loved one, those who have lost their job or their business, and also those who have lost a sought-after milestone, a graduation or other celebration to this pandemic. No message of resolve or courage should deny, nor can it replace, the unrecoverable aspects of your loss. Yet Scripture also reminds us that joy cometh in the morning. It will be morning again in our village, and the vitality that we know and love will return to our streets and our parks and our downtown. And when it does, perhaps we will appreciate it just a little bit more, be just a little more grateful for this wonderful community of Downers Grove. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Greg. Marge, you have anything this evening?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. First, I really want to thank the village staff, especially the village manager, the village attorney, the assistant village manager, who have continued to go into the office every day and try to keep things running for us. Everybody who's working from home, it's great that we have that ability and we have that flexibility. Thank you to all of you. I want to thank the first responders, the police, the fire, who are just amazing, our paramedics, our public works. Something we can do for them is please take a minute while you're staying home and staying safe to go out and check and see that your house address is visible from the street. If you need somebody in an emergency, it will make it all that much easier for them to find you. Also, if you're going to choose to use a mask and gloves when you're out at the store picking up what you need, please make sure that the disposable masks and the disposable gloves are just used once and toss them. You run a risk of using them over and over again, and please make sure they're disposed of properly and not just tossed in the parking lot for somebody else to clean up. That would be really appreciated. If you're using reusable masks, often even made at home, that's great, that's fine, but please make sure when you come home, you use them just once and you wash, because washing them keeps them clean, and I don't know that there's any way to sanitize the disposable stuff. If you can, reach out by phone or from across the street, check on your neighbors, check on your friends. Most people don't ask for help, but sometimes if you ask them, you might find something that you can help with. You don't have to be outside of a 6-foot social distancing to help your neighbor. And Downers Grove has got the best neighbors in the world. So really just look around and see if there's anything that you can do to make everybody's life easier. Please stay safe. Please stay well. Please stay at home. That's the biggest thing you can do to contribute to everyone staying safe and staying well. And thank you to everyone who's up every day, who has to go to work and is making it possible for the rest of us to stay home. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Marge. Cavanaugh?
Thank you, Mayor Barnett. I mentioned this earlier this week and alluded to it tonight, but I think I'm continually amazed by how well run the village of Downers Grove actually is. I think when I look at the efforts over the past week of Mike and Enza, Dave, Megan, Mayor Barnett, my fellow commissioners, our first responders, and all the men and women that help our municipality move forward. I just want everyone involved in this, even those individuals in the community that we don't see, to know that your sacrifice is apparent in times like this, in these difficult times, and they are greatly appreciated. I think we can all recall one life circumstance that looms so large that it can often, we don't feel like we can forget it. However, none of us has ever experienced anything as far-reaching as the global coronavirus pandemic. The reality is that no individual will go through this unscathed. By the time things subside, the ripple effects will have been felt in some shape, form, or fashion. Over the past several weeks, we've all been forced to learn new words like social distancing, are coping with prolonged shelter-in-place orders, and we all shoulder and feel the heaviness and responsibility that comes from knowing that our actions or inactions could possibly save lives. No individual is an island. It's important to remember that we are all in this thing together. Like you, I recognize the worry, the uncertainty, the boredom, the frustration, and the possible fear that comes from what the future may or may not hold. I would like to encourage our community to try and find and extend an additional amount of grace and kindness, even kindness that we don't even realize that we may have at this time right now to someone else. I would ask that we remember to check in on individuals in our own personal circles and to make sure that we are doing everything we can to encourage someone else at these times. I would also ask that we try to remember that even in the midst of the chaos that we feel on a day-to-day basis, that there are still better days ahead. Lastly, I would just encourage anyone in our community of Downers Grove that's in need of help or struggling in some shape, form, or fashion to be sure to reach out and let someone know. I think as a village, as a state, as a nation, and even as a part of the global community, we are stronger together. Thank you, Mayor Barnett.
Thank you, Cavanaugh. Leslie?
Thank you, Mayor. First, I want to thank the village staff for this report. While this is an unprecedented scenario with unknown long-term effects, I hope that everyone can recognize the work that was put into this by our staff. The fact that we have a plan to weather a $20 million storm this year without impacting police, fire, and public safety operations is quite frankly more than remarkable. After this presentation, it should be clear that regardless of which scenario we face, we are absolutely in capable and prepared hands. And please let that serve as one small consolation through all of this and ease some of the anxiety that many of us are certainly feeling. On that note, I also want to state that if you are out there struggling to find the positive in all of this, I see you. Many of us, myself included, are experiencing stages of grief, anxiety, and varying levels of difficulty balancing family, work, or loss of work, and mental health. Prolonged isolation like this is hard, and if you're not picking up a new hobby or enjoying every moment with your kids, that's okay too. If you're having a hard time, please try to find some time, even if it is just a short breathing exercise for yourself. Virtually reach out to friends if you are able. And if you're not sure which resources are available to help you through this, please contact us. Even if we cannot directly help, we can make sure you get the resources and the contact information that you need. I've been fielding emails all week and will continue to be as responsive as I can. We are here as a resource, as a connector, so please use us if you need anything. Finally, please continue to support the community in any way you can. Encourage friends and family to stay home. We have first responders, healthcare professionals, and other essential workers who are isolating themselves from their own children, missing birthdays, in order to keep us safe. Respect their sacrifice and return the favor. Call a loved one who lives alone to check on them. Support a local business through a curbside order of donation. We live in a community like Downers Grove for a reason. We love the people, the independent small businesses, and let's make sure everyone feels that throughout this emergency. We have seen so many residents, nonprofits, schools, and businesses already step up to lift one another. So let's be kind and continue that for the remainder of the social distancing period. I wish everyone out there a safe and healthy April as we reach as we're approaching the predicted peak for the COVID-19 infections in our area. And my greatest hope is that after all of this, it feels like an overreaction because our population stayed healthy. Be well, everyone, and thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Leslie. Rich?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. First of all, I want to thank you, Mayor, for the extra effort you've put in these last few weeks. And staff, you've done an amazing job. Dave Fieldman, our village manager, Enzo Petrarca, our attorney, and Mike Baker, our deputy village manager, and also to the wonderful work that our budget team has had to put in, and each one of our department managers. You are to be definitely lauded for the fine work you've done here. The second point I'd like to make is this is a significant impact on us. A 42% cut is very much like a two-income family where one of the primary breadwinners gets laid off without any unemployment benefits. So think of yourselves and your personal budget, how you would have to adjust in order to do that, and that's exactly what our village is doing. The next thing, and people have been asking, what can they do to help? And probably the single biggest thing you can do, in addition to staying home, is be intentional about shopping in Downers Grove. And nothing against our surrounding suburbs. They're all fine municipalities. But our budget is very much structured in a way where we rely a lot less on property taxes and rely a lot more on sales taxes and other items. So if you want to go to a store, just give it a second thought. Can I go to a Downers Grove store? Because that would help us out and help all the neighbors out. And once again, please stay home, stay safe, and God bless all of you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Rich. Nicole?
Yes, unfortunately, being the last to go, I'm going to apologize that this may seem redundant. But if it hasn't been obvious enough yet, the health and safety of our residents is a top priority. And a big thank you goes out to our village staff and our first responders during this time, and our mayor for his leadership. For all of the anxiety and fear and stress this pandemic has brought upon us, it has also brought something else, which is the opportunity to empathize and be compassionate. Whether you are currently doing all right or you are barely surviving, there are still some things we can do to help support one another. Keep scheduling those virtual happy hours and meetings with your family and your friends. Buy local and help Downers Grove businesses open their doors once more when this is all over. Ask what you can do to help and find a way to do it. And remember that we are all in this together, and it's okay to be vulnerable. Reach out to someone who might need to hear that they are not alone and the way they are feeling is not crazy, or just call to check in and chat. Take the time to appreciate life as we continue on this journey. I'm so incredibly proud to be a member of this community because I hear, see, and feel the outpouring of love and support for one another, and we really do live in the best village there is. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay home. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Nicole. Well, if you're still watching from home, thank you for staying with us. I'm glad to be back at Village Hall where we last met, believe it or not, on March 10th. Back then, none of us could fully appreciate that only 5 days later, our collective worlds would radically change. The cancellation of schools and schedules, the closing of local businesses and public buildings, the loss of old routines and the building of new ones. And that includes the one you're practicing right now, our stay-at-home order, which remains in place. I know it's not easy. We miss spending time with family and friends at local restaurants, or meeting on sidewalks or across fences while kids play on playgrounds, or gathering at the library or going to school meetings or sharing coffee together, or discussing the world while watching lacrosse, soccer, or baseball games. Our houses of worship are empty, and even the moose is quiet. But that stay-at-home order remains tremendously important, and I thank you all for doing your part. These days we're talking to each other in ways that didn't make sense 6 months ago. We use words like coronavirus, e-learning, Zooming, PPEs, N95s, and curve flattening. To say something has gone viral, well, that just doesn't seem as much fun anymore. But while these changes challenge our faith, our patience, and our sensibilities, this pandemic also makes us think and plan differently than most have ever had to. And it's testing our ability to adapt and showing, perhaps, that it's possible to do the impossible. It's showing things we probably knew but never internalized or didn't take seriously because we simply didn't have to. COVID-19 will likely change how we shop, live, travel, and work for years to come. When we find ourselves forced to stop the go-go world we live in, what are we really missing? Globally, slowing down could ultimately prove to help our climate and our environment. More personally, slowing down can help us rethink our motivations and reconsider the people and things that give us meaning. The mandate to stay indoors and away from others should give us a greater appreciation of the beauty of our community and the natural world we so easily take for granted. As absence makes the heart grow fonder, perhaps this crisis will renew our commitment to protect and enhance that which we've been given. Doing less can mean experiencing more and experiencing differently. Our community is experiencing each other differently, apart but still together. And as we look around Downers Grove, we see so many stories of inspiration and innovation and caring and community, stories which demonstrate yet again that we have the capacity to face any challenge that comes our way. Downers Grove resident and local business owner Tom Murray, as just one example of many, shows how quickly we can change our mindset and adapt to help those around us. His business, North Cape, should be getting its outdoor furniture ready for the busy summer season. Instead, his employees shifted their focus from patios to personal protection equipment. And that might benefit you or your neighbor, and it can help keep the frontline professionals safe so they continue to save lives. In a recent conversation, he said, "We figured we could do better, we wanted to help, we would like to keep people employed." I realize not everyone is in a position to impact their community in exactly the same way, but I'm certain that each of us, in our own unique way, can do better to help the people around us and that we love, our neighbors and friends, work and survive. And that's how I see our community. We do better, we help people. Over the last several weeks, I've seen it happen in big and small ways, and I want you to know you're seen, and I want you to know you're heard. So let me just take a minute to thank you. Thank you to businesses like Great Harvest Bread Company stepping up for pads, a critical organization that's stressed now more than ever before. Thank you to the residents working independently as DG mask makers, pumping out literally thousands of masks for our healthcare workers. Thank you to churches adding food pantries, developing distance distribution, extending hours, or creating sack lunches for those most in need in our community. Thank you to our high schools using 3D printing abilities to make face shields for those on our healthcare front lines. Thank you to local restaurants setting up meal trains, or local residents setting up meal trains, and thank you to our restaurants like Scuttlebutts, donating and facilitating the efforts to feed the frontline folks at Good Samaritan Hospital. Thank you to our Rotary Club, who, despite having to cancel their largest annual fundraiser, Grove Fest, have stepped up to help anyway, assisting the village in securing much-needed PPEs as well as supporting a supply drive for Good Samaritan Hospital as well. Thank you to the parents and friends who have organized window messages, drive-by birthday parties, and scavenger hunts. And thank you to everyone in the community who displayed candles and lights last Wednesday evening just to shine a little light in a dark time. Please know that in this isolation, you're not alone. Like you, I sometimes wonder, how will we get through? Our community, our ancestors, they survived civil wars, world wars, Spanish flus, depressions, oil crisis, housing crisis, runaway inflation. We'll get through this too. But still, how? By doing what Downers Grove does. By each of us doing our part and considering how our efforts, no matter how small, can save lives and save jobs. And by asking what we owe to ourselves and what we owe to each other. One of the reasons I'm honored and humbled to serve this community is because I've seen time and again how you, yes, each and every one of you, extend help simply because it's asked. We'll get through this by continuing to look out for each other, by thinking of each other first, by helping those that help, and by standing up for and supporting those on the front lines, ensuring they're able to do what they do best. That's our community. We do better, and we help. In a world that felt like it was increasingly running away and increasingly divisive, COVID-19 has slammed the brakes, but it's also showing us we're all in this together. This virus doesn't pay attention to what makes us different. And my hope is it'll remind us all to do the same, to ignore our differences and see each other as human, each worthy of everything we hope for ourselves and for our families, because we are all in this together. When this is over, and it will be over at some point, we'll look back on this time and remember board games and puzzles, the smell of our kitchens, the laughter of family, no matter how we reach or know them. We'll remember the dogs that got 3 walks a day, and those closets that are clean because of all those weeks at home. We might remember e-learning and Zoom meetings or trying to get grandparents to operate FaceTime. But we'll remember our walks and how we couldn't recall which day it was because we were living in the moment. We'll savor the good that came from the bad, and through those things lost, I pray we renew an appreciation for what we have and develop a newfound appreciation for how interconnected and the same we really are. Thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you for listening. Thank you for your time, but most of all, thank you for your efforts to help one another and for pulling together as a community. We have no public comments that have come into the course of the meeting, and so with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mayor Barnett, I move to adjourn.
Second.
The motion to adjourn is made by Commissioner Jose and seconded by Commissioner Earl. So a roll call. Megan.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Gray?
Aye.
Commissioner Kulovany?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugitt?
Aye.
Commissioner Walus?
Aye.
Mayor Barnett?
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you. Be well. Good night.